At least your brother knows how to make me feel like a woman." The words hung in the air between us, suspended like poison. I watched my wife's lips curl into a smirk as she continued chopping vegetables, the knife hitting the cutting board with rhythmic precision. That sound, thwack, 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 was all I could hear as my world collapsed inward. I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. Something deep within me had already known, had been collecting evidence like rainwater in a barrel, drop by torturous drop. The late-night texts, the way she'd leave the room to take calls, how my brother Matt suddenly needed so much support and guidance from Caroline, my wife of 7 years. In that moment, as she stood there chopping carrots for a dinner I knew I wouldn't be able to eat, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from absolute clarity. The knife in her hand caught the kitchen light, flashing like a warning signal, and I knew exactly what needed to be done. "Dinner's at 7 on Saturday," I said, my voice steady. "I'll text everyone. A family celebration." Caroline's knife paused mid-chop. A flicker of something, confusion, concern, crossed her face before settling back into casual indifference. "What are we celebrating?" I met her gaze, my face a careful mask. "Family, truth, all the things that matter." She resumed chopping, a small frown forming between her brows. "That sounds cryptic. Does it?" I reached for an apple from the fruit bowl, polishing it against my shirt. "I just think it's time we all came together. Your parents, too, if they're free." "My parents?" Now she looked genuinely puzzled. "They're in Florida until next month." I nodded, taking a bite of the apple. It tasted like nothing. "That's right. I forgot. Just our family then." As I walked out of the kitchen, I could feel her eyes on my back, watching, assessing. For the first time in months, I was the one who had her confused, off balance. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "I'm Daniel Westbrook, 38, Chief Architect at Meridian Design Group. The firm my father built from nothing, the legacy I was entrusted to carry forward while my younger brother Matt, the golden child with the business degree, was being groomed to handle the financial side. We were supposed to lead together, brothers united by blood and ambition. At least, that was the story. I was always the responsible one, the planner, the builder. Even as children, I was the one who constructed elaborate forts while Matt charmed our parents into bringing us snacks. I designed, he socialized, I created, he took credit. But I never minded. That was our dynamic, and I believed in him. I believed in us. Boston's Back Bay is where I've made my home, our home. The brownstone had been my wedding gift to Caroline. I'd spent months secretly renovating it before we married, working nights and weekends, wanting to give her the perfect space. I remember carrying her across the threshold, her laughter echoing through empty rooms that would soon be filled with our life together. "This is too much, Daniel," she'd whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the restored crown molding, the custom kitchen I'd designed knowing her love for cooking, the reading nook with built-in shelves for her beloved art books. "Nothing is too much for you," I'd told her, believing every word. Now those rooms felt hollow, haunted by something worse than ghosts. Every corner held memories that curdled in my mind. Christmas mornings, dinner parties, lazy Sundays reading together on the couch. Had she been thinking of him even then? Had she been comparing us, finding me wanting? The brownstone, once my proudest creation, now felt like a mausoleum for a marriage that perhaps had never truly existed. I'd installed the security system 6 months ago, not because I suspected anything, but because there had been a break-in down the street. The system was comprehensive, motion sensors, cameras covering all entry points, even interior rooms for when we traveled. The app on my phone had been forgotten until 3 weeks ago, when I was stuck at the office late, finalizing plans for the Harborview project. The Harborview was my biggest project to date, a waterfront development that would define Boston's skyline for generations. Caroline had been enthusiastic about it from the start, encouraging me to take the lead even though it would mean late nights, weekend work, complete immersion. "This is your moment," she'd said, massaging my shoulders as I reviewed the initial sketches. "This project will make your career. I can handle things at home." How generous she'd been. How supportive. I was at my desk at 11:40 p.m., refining the environmental impact section of my presentation when my phone buzzed. A notification. Motion detected in the guest bedroom at 11:42 p.m. I almost dismissed it. Caroline often read in there when she couldn't sleep. But something, intuition perhaps, or the culmination of 1,000 tiny doubts I'd been suppressing, made me tap the alert, watch the footage. My stomach dropped. My brother entering our home using his own key. Caroline meeting him in the hallway, dressed in something I'd never seen before. A silk robe that clung to her body, revealing more than it concealed. Their embrace wasn't familial. The way his hands moved down her back made my stomach turn. They disappeared into the guest room, closing the door behind them. I sat frozen, unable to look away from my phone screen. The timestamp continued to run. I should have turned it off. Should have called, interrupted them, confronted them right then. Instead, I watched the minutes tick by in a state of numb disbelief. They were in there for 2 hours and 17 minutes. My brother left at 1:59 a.m. Caroline showered immediately after. The next day, she told me she'd gone to bed early with a headache. "I was worried about you," she said over morning coffee, her face the perfect picture of wifely concern. "You're working too hard. Did you get my text?" I hadn't. Or perhaps I had and simply hadn't registered it, consumed as I was by what I'd witnessed. I mumbled something about being in a design flow, apologized for not responding. "It's okay," she said, squeezing my hand. "I understand how important this project is." That night, instead of working late, I came home early, told her I needed a break. We watched a movie together, her head on my shoulder, her perfume, the same she'd worn for my brother, making me quietly nauseous. After she went to sleep, I checked the footage from previous weeks. The pattern was clear, always on my late nights, always in our home. Sometimes they'd sit at our kitchen table afterward, drinking wine, laughing. Once I heard my name. Daniel would never suspect. He's too trusting, too absorbed in his work. Matt's voice. My brother, the oblivious architect. Always building things, never seeing what's right in front of him. Caroline's laugh, musical and light. "That's what makes this so easy. He thinks you're struggling since Lauren left you. If he knew you were sleeping with his wife, he'd probably still try to fix things." That's Daniel, everyone's problem solver. Their laughter felt like broken glass in my veins. The footage wasn't the worst part. It was the realization that this betrayal had been crafted with such precision. Caroline had suggested I take on the Harborview project, knowing it would mean late nights. She had encouraged the Thursday dinner tradition with my parents, where Matt would give updates about his personal life, his breakup, his temporary housing situation. "Your brother needs support right now," she'd said. "Family is everything." And I, fool that I was, had agreed when she suggested Matt could stay in our guest room just until he finds a new place. He never moved in officially, but he had a key. For emergencies, Caroline had insisted. I began looking deeper. Their text messages, which I accessed through our shared cloud account. Plans made, lies coordinated, mockery of me, of my dedication to work, of my trusting nature. My wife and my brother had been sleeping together for 4 months, but they'd been laughing at me for much longer. After her cruel whisper in the kitchen, that moment of such naked contempt, I moved with mechanical precision. I called Thomas Grayson, a lawyer I'd worked with on several commercial projects, known for his ruthless discretion. I scheduled a meeting for the following morning. "I need options," I told him. and I need absolute confidentiality. That night, I slept in the guest room, telling Caroline I didn't want to disturb her with my early morning call. The sheets had been changed, but I still felt contaminated. I lay awake, planning. The next day, Thomas laid out my options. Massachusetts was a no-fault divorce state, but our prenuptial agreement had an infidelity clause. With evidence, Caroline would get nothing. Moreover, the footage contained evidence of them plotting, discussing financial matters related to my family business, potential claims for intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy. "Do you want to destroy her?" Thomas asked bluntly. "I want justice," I replied, "for all of it." The week between discovery and the family dinner was the strangest of my life. I moved through my days like a ghost, attending meetings, approving designs, discussing budgets. Colleagues commented on my focus, my intensity. "Daniel's in the zone," I heard someone say. If only they knew. At home, I played the role of oblivious husband, asking about Caroline's day, discussing weekend plans. I found myself watching her like a specimen under glass. This woman I'd loved, now a stranger performing a role. She'd touch my arm, kiss my cheek, ask about the Harborview project with seemingly genuine interest. "Are you excited about the dinner Saturday?" she asked Thursday night as we prepared for bed. "It'll be nice to have everyone together." "Very," I replied, folding my clothes with careful precision. "I think it will be memorable." She smiled, that same smile that had once made my heart race. Now it made my skin crawl. "You seem different lately," she observed. "More intense." I shrugged. "The project? Deadline pressure?" She nodded, accepting the explanation. "You're working too hard. Maybe after the dinner we could take a weekend away? Just the two of us?" The audacity nearly made me laugh. "That sounds nice," I lied. "I'd like that." All while systematically documenting everything. I installed additional cameras, living room, kitchen, bedroom. I backed up text messages, emails, phone records. I moved money to secure accounts. I spoke with my personal banker about protecting assets. "Major renovations," I explained when he raised an eyebrow at the substantial withdrawals. "Surprise for my wife." A surprise indeed. I spent hours with Thomas, my lawyer, reviewing every detail of our prenuptial agreement, every possible legal recourse. I showed him selected portions of the footage. "Jesus, Daniel," he muttered. "Your own brother?" "Not anymore," I replied. Caroline noticed nothing. Or perhaps she simply didn't care enough to notice. She was too busy texting my brother, planning their next rendezvous, unaware that every message was being logged, every whispered phone call recorded. "He's acting strange," I saw her text Matt on Friday morning. "More attentive. Do you think he suspects?" "Daniel?" "Not a chance," came the reply. "He's probably just stressed about the project. Don't worry. Saturday will be awkward with everyone there. Just a few hours, then back to normal. Dad's bringing the partnership papers. Once that's done, we'll have more options." On Wednesday, 3 days before the dinner, I met with my father for lunch. Not at our usual spot, but at a quiet restaurant outside the city. A place with private booths, discreet service. My father looked older than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, the silver in his hair more pronounced. He built Meridian from nothing, through recessions and personal setbacks, including my mother's cancer scare 10 years ago. The firm was his legacy, his third child. "Everything all right, son?" he asked, studying my face. My father had always been perceptive. Not much got past him. "I need to ask you something," I said carefully, pushing my untouched food around my plate. "The new partnership structure for the firm. Is it finalized?" He looked surprised. "Not yet. The lawyers are still drawing up the final documents. Matt's portion would be equal to yours." I thought that's what we all wanted. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "And if something were to happen?" If Matt weren't suitable? My father's eyes narrowed. Is there something I should know? On Saturday, I told him, meeting his gaze steadily. You'll know everything on Saturday. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. My father was not a man who pushed. He understood the value of patience, of waiting for the right moment. I trust your judgment, Daniel, he said finally. I always have. Those words stayed with me as I finalized my preparations. At least someone in my family believed in me. I remember our wedding day. Caroline radiant in white, promising to honor and cherish. My brother standing beside me as best man, his hand on my shoulder as he toasted, my brother, my best friend, the most honest man I know. I remember teaching Matt how to ride a bike when he was 5, bandaging his scraped knees, telling him it would be okay. I remember defending him when kids at school bullied him for being smaller, for being sensitive. I remember introducing him to Caroline at a company Christmas party 4 years ago. My brilliant little brother, I'd said proudly. The financial wizard who's going to help me run the family business someday. These memories cycled through my mind as I prepared for Saturday, each one more painful than the last. Not because of what I'd lost, but because I now understood none of it had been real. The brother I loved, the wife I cherished, they were characters I'd invented, projections of my own loyalty onto people incapable of returning it. Saturday arrived. I spent the morning finalizing details, checking camera angles, ensuring the projector was connected properly. Caroline bustled around, preparing food, arranging flowers, completely unaware of what was coming. You seem distracted, she said at one point, touching my arm. I smiled at her. Just thinking about tonight. Family together. Important moments. She kissed my cheek. You're sweet, always caring about everyone else. The guests arrived precisely at 7. My parents, my older sister and her husband, 2 cousins from my father's side, my mother's sister, and Matt arriving last, giving Caroline a hug that lasted a beat too long. Dinner was served, wine poured, conversation flowed. I watched it all from a strange remove, as if observing actors in a play. My father discussed the business, my mother talked about her garden club, my sister shared stories about her children. Throughout it all, the subtle glances between Caroline and Matt, their carefully orchestrated lack of interaction, which now seemed so obviously performative. When dessert was served, I stood, raising my glass. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, I began. Family is everything, loyalty is everything, truth is everything. I pressed a button on the remote in my pocket. The lights dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling, an installation I'd added 3 days prior, explaining to Caroline it was for watching movies on family nights. I have something I want to share with all of you, I said calmly. The footage began to play, crystal clear, with perfect audio. Caroline and Matt in the guest bedroom, their words, their actions, their betrayal exposed in high definition. Daniel is such a fool, Matt's voice, slightly distorted but unmistakable. He trusts you completely, Caroline laughed. He thinks you're struggling, needing his help. If he knew you were sleeping with his wife, he'd probably still try to fix things. That's my brother. Always trying to build things. Too bad he couldn't build a wife who could stay faithful. Their cruel laughter filled the dining room. The footage continued, showing multiple encounters, spanning weeks. Conversations about money, about the business, about how Matt would eventually control the financial side, could funnel money their way. Once your dad gives him part of the company, we'll have options. I let it play for precisely 12 minutes. Long enough for there to be no doubt, no possibility of explanation or excuse. Long enough for the full scope of their betrayal to be understood. When I finally switched it off, the silence in the room was absolute. My mother's face was ashen. My sister had her hand over her mouth. My father sat completely still, his eyes fixed on Matt, who had gone pale. Caroline wasn't looking at anyone. Her eyes were on the tablecloth, her hands gripping her napkin so tightly her knuckles were white. "Dad," I said quietly, "I thought you should know exactly who you were planning to entrust with the family business, who you were planning to make equal partners with me." My father stood slowly. From his jacket pocket, he withdrew an envelope. The partnership agreement draft, which he'd planned to announce tonight. He tore it in half, then quarters, then dropped the pieces onto the table. "Get out of my house," he said to Matt, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "You are no longer my son." Matt started to speak, but my father raised his hand. "Not one word, not one excuse. Get out. Now." As Matt rose unsteadily to his feet, I turned to Caroline. From my own jacket, I produced a manila envelope. "Divorce papers," I said, my voice steady. "Already filed with the court. The infidelity clause in our prenup has been triggered. You get nothing. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from the house. Anything left behind will be donated." Caroline finally looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Daniel, you can't—" "I already have," I cut her off. "Thomas Grayson is handling everything. He'll also be pursuing civil claims for emotional distress, conspiracy, and defamation. The evidence is quite compelling." I turned to address the stunned family. "I apologize for the dramatic revelation, but I believed everyone deserved to know the truth. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think dinner is over." I walked out of the dining room, up the stairs, and into my home office. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting. My mother crying, my father's controlled fury, Caroline's desperate attempts to explain. None of it touched me. I felt nothing but a cold, calm certainty that justice was being served. 2 months later, I sat in Thomas Grayson's office, reviewing the final settlement. "Matt's been blacklisted from every major financial firm in Boston," Thomas informed me. "Your father's connections made sure of that. He's working at a call center in Dorchester, trying to make rent on that apartment we found him." "And Caroline?" "Worse off." The judge was particularly disturbed by the footage showing them discussing how to potentially manipulate company funds once Matt was made partner. That elevated it from simple infidelity to potential criminal conspiracy. Her parents took her in, but the humiliation has been total. She lost her job at the gallery. Apparently, your father had a word with the owner. No one in your social circle will speak to her. I nodded, feeling no satisfaction, just a dull acknowledgement that consequences had followed actions. "The house is sold," Thomas continued. "As you requested, half the proceeds have been donated to the Children's Hospital. Your new condo is ready whenever you are." I signed the final papers, closing this chapter permanently. "Daniel," Thomas said as I prepared to leave, "for what it's worth, I've handled hundreds of divorces. I've never seen someone handle betrayal with such control. Most people explode, make mistakes. You were surgical." I thought about this as I walked to my car. The truth was I hadn't felt in control at all. I'd been operating on instinct, on a primal need for justice rather than revenge. I hadn't wanted to destroy Caroline and Matt out of hatred. I'd simply needed to excise them from my life completely, like cutting out a cancer. 6 months after the dinner, I ran into Caroline's mother at a grocery store. She looked aged, diminished. The scandal had rippled outward, touching everyone connected to us. "She's moving to Chicago," she told me, her voice tight. "Starting over. She knows what she did was unforgivable." I nodded, feeling nothing. "She lost another job," her mother continued, perhaps hoping for some sign of sympathy. "The story follows her. No one wants to hire someone who, well..." I selected an apple from the display, examining it for bruises. "That's unfortunate. Matt calls your parents every week," she added, clutching her purse with white knuckles. "They never answer. His fiancée left him. Did you know that? She was going to move from Seattle, but after everything... I hadn't known Matt was engaged again. It wasn't information I needed. Your father made sure he can't work in finance anywhere in New England, she pressed on. He's delivering packages now. I met her eyes then. Mrs. Ellis, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? She flinched slightly. They made a terrible mistake, Daniel. A horrible, unforgivable mistake. But this level of destruction... Consequences, I corrected her. Not destruction. Consequences. I paid for my groceries and left her standing there, her face a mixture of anger and despair. I felt nothing about her pain, nothing about Caroline's struggles, nothing about Matt's downfall. The part of me capable of feeling for them had been surgically removed the moment I heard those words in our kitchen, felt the contempt radiating from the woman who had vowed to love and honor me. That night, I stood on the balcony of my new condo, looking out over the Boston skyline. The Harborview project was visible from here, my vision becoming reality, rising against the harbor backdrop. In my hand was a glass of scotch, in my mind the memory of that family dinner, of faces realizing the depth of betrayal, of justice served cold and complete. My parents had called earlier. They were doing well, adjusting to the new normal. My father had completely restructured the company, promoting a talented young architect to be my second in command. The firm was thriving. My mother had finally begun to speak of Matt again, though only in the context of grief, as if he had died. In a way, he had. The brother I'd loved, protected, supported, he had never existed, just as the wife I'd cherished had been a carefully constructed illusion. I received a letter from Caroline last week. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope but didn't open it. Instead, I returned it to sender. There was nothing she could say that would matter to me now. I hadn't just walked away. I had ensured that the betrayal that once excited them became the very thing that defined and limited their futures. Not because I wanted revenge, but because some actions must have consequences proportionate to their cruelty. The dinner hadn't just been about exposing their affair. It had been about revealing their true characters to everyone who mattered, showing my family who they really were when they thought no one was watching. The mockery, the calculation, the cold assessment of how they could benefit from my father's generosity while laughing at my expense. I'd heard through mutual friends that Caroline had tried dating again, but her reputation preceded her. The woman who slept with her husband's brother and got caught on camera wasn't exactly a desirable partner in Boston's close-knit social circles. She'd deleted all her social media after the third anonymous account posted clips from the video. Despite my lawyer's best efforts to contain it, portions had leaked, though I suspected not accidentally. My father had connections everywhere, and his rage had been biblical. As for Matt, his career was in shambles. No respectable firm would touch him. The family name that should have opened doors now slammed them shut. My father had made certain of that. The inheritance he'd counted on, gone. The brother who had always cleaned up his messes, gone. The woman he'd thought was worth the risk, gone. I took a sip of scotch and felt, for the first time in months, something like peace. Not happiness, not yet. But the quiet satisfaction of an architect who had designed something perfectly to specification, in this case, the systematic dismantling of those who had tried to destroy me. The Harborview project had won a major design award last month. My career was ascending. I had dates occasionally, though nothing serious. I was in no rush to replace what I had lost, because I understood now that it had never been real to begin with. Sometimes, the most effective destruction requires nothing more than exposing the truth and letting it do its work. I hadn't needed to raise my voice, hadn't needed violence or threats. I had simply revealed who they truly were and let the natural consequences unfold. I finished my drink and went inside, closing the door on the past and stepping into a future entirely my own. Tomorrow would bring new designs, new challenges, new opportunities to build something lasting and true. Unlike my marriage, unlike my relationship with my brother, my creations of steel and glass and stone would stand the test of time, honest in their purpose, transparent in their intentions. And that, I realized as I set down my empty glass, was all I had ever wanted. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.